Welcome to the companion podcast to Podcasting for Small Business, the essential blueprint to launch your podcast. Hey, everybody, I'm Ray Sidney Smith, along with my co author and co host, Steve Orr. How's it going, Steve?
Ray, it's going great. Raring to go as always.
Fantastic. It turns out that you sat in exactly the right spot so that the logo for the book actually shows up right in the right spot. So there we go. It couldn't be better. Today in this episode, we're actually going to be diving into chapter 10, which is about promoting your podcast. And
Chapter 11, Ray.
sorry, chapter 11.
We're off to a great start.
I'm clearly looking at the wrong document, but we are now rounding the corner of the book. We are in the last chapter, and so we have had a chance to talk through all of the other parts of podcasting in this kind of primer on how businesses should be able to go ahead and podcast. I can't believe that we have gotten through this stretch of podcasting. It's been, I think, maybe 13 or 14 weeks of us recording with our special guests and so on and so forth. But what we know is that artificial intelligence has rapidly entered the world of podcasting and right along with the discussion of video as we've discussed in prior episodes. So for many creators, the question is not whether or not to use AI as a part of their workflow, but really to figure out how to use it responsibly and effectively. And so Steve and I, want you to know that AI does not replace the human in podcasting. Zero chance of that, right? Not in our perspective. Instead, it can act as a highly capable assistant. And that's what we've really talked about in this chapter is really how to use it to research, plan, produce, and promote your podcast more efficiently and sometimes more effectively by virtue of the fact that you have this highly capable assistant sitting on your computer in your phone at all times. And so in this episode, we're going to really talk about podcasting workflow, how AI can augment research and planning, how it can augment and support you in your production and post-production, as well as promotion and development of your audience. And so this is all about helping you to maintain authenticity while the podcast is being produced, right? And really helping you understand that authenticity still matters most in all of this. So while you can use the technologies to make your podcast better, we want to make sure that we're exploring AI to help you amplify your podcasting efforts, not to replace it. So let's talk about really the idea in the book, Steve. We premised the chapter in opening up to talk about AI as basically a podcast production assistant. What do you recall about our discussions in that?
Well, before I even get there, I just want to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to read a couple of sentences from chapter 11 that, in my mind, sum up what we're really talking about here and what's most important here.
Am I going to say no to you, Steve?
Yes, but in this particular case, it's not going to work.
That's true. That is
So
true.
So let me just start by saying, and this is word for word from the beginning of this chapter 11 in our book, while the allure of automated content creation and effortless editing may be strong, remember why you embarked on this podcasting journey in the first place. Your unique perspective, your passion, and you've mentioned this, your authentic voice. These are the cornerstones of a successful and engaging podcast. Now, that to me says it all right there. Now, I wanted to, I know you had asked me a question. I wanted to kind of slightly deviate from that question
Sure. Go
and
for it.
ask you a question. We had a lot of discussions about whether we needed to add this chapter and talk about AI in podcasting. You were reluctant at first. What changed your mind and deciding that we really needed this chapter?
Yeah, I started to look at the industry news and I wanted to see whether or not this would really die down, right? Because the reality is that many trends, we've seen them over time come and go, and people get really excited about things. I think video is one of those things in podcasting right now. I think a lot of people are very excited about video. They don't realize how much energy and cost it will take to make a video podcast happen, and people are just going to lean back on audio in a few years. So my argument against having a chapter on video podcasting in Podcasting for Small Business may be wrong in 5 years, but it's certainly not the case today, and I don't think it's going to be the case in 5 years. I think the writing is on the wall that a lot of these large corporations, Spotify, Apple, Apple just made some new inroads into new technology in video
In
as
video,
well,
yes.
with HLS and otherwise, and so good for them. And I think that video podcasting is fantastic for those who want to do it. But the reality is that most businesses are not going to. If they're going to do a true video podcast, they're just going to put a show on YouTube. It's not a podcast; it's just a show on YouTube, and that's okay, right? That's totally fine. And I think there's a value in that. I just don't think that that's podcasting. And so with AI, it was the same thing. When the discussions you and I were having, you were advocating for AI, and I thought to myself, okay, are we going to see AI peter out? Because my belief, and my this is still my belief, we're going to kind of have two categories of AI: that which is integrated into the tools we use every day, and it just becomes a feature that we use, right? Like most people don't uh jump up like they're crazy for spell check or grammar check in Word, right, or in Google Docs, right? And that's basically what AI is going to be for most people. It's going to be a tool that you press a button and it says do this thing, and it's just going to do it for you inside the tool. So you're no longer going to talk about AI in that sense. And then there are going to be tools that are going to be AI by itself. It's going to have some standalone kind of feature. And I think for now, and at least for the next 5 years, we're going to see AI be its own thing, and people have to grok what that means, not the tool, but the actual verb. And that meant it was important enough for us to go ahead and do that. And as someone who, I don't consider myself a futurist, but I do pay a lot of attention to technology forecasting, both for my own geekish and nerdy interests, but also for my clients. And so in my actual work, I am consistently looking at technology to see whether or not it has reached the stage of maturity and market capability to be worth implementing. And it was through that analysis that I then said, you know what, Steve's onto something here, and let me do the research to see whether or not it makes sense. And once I did that kind of internal analysis, I decided that it was the right choice for us. And it frustrated me to no end
But I
because
actually had an idea.
no, not at all, not at all. You had lots of great ideas throughout the book process, and but the real challenge was now it required us to have to now write another chapter,
Of
and
course.
it broke the kind of cleanness of the even number of chapters and so on and so forth. But those were easy to get over. I mean, I had to get over myself, and that's pretty easy to do. And so, but it's no, I come at some issues pretty hard and fast, as you know, where I'll say like,
Mhm.
no, I don't like this. I don't want to do it at all. But then I will sit back and I will think on my own, and then I'll say, you know what, that's not true. We should actually do that thing. And so I know that we had lots of those kinds of situations in the process of the book writing. And I know that once I've had time by myself, then I can like really dwell on something, properly analyze, synthesize, and come to a decision that I typically find is going to be the right decision. And this was, I think, the right decision. I think putting this chapter in ultimately came out to be helping put guardrails on a topic, but also eliminating for people the possibilities. As we're going to talk about, there's so many different ways in which you can use this technology today to really help your podcast.
And one of the keys to me in all of what you just said, and you're thinking about this, and now that AI is here and there's so many different ways to use it, is that for podcasting, I believe we're on the same page here in that we think of AI as a team of assistants rather than a replacement for your creative voice. So, what does that mean? That means you can use AI in a number of ways. And I'll throw out a couple, and you probably have a couple of your choices as well. But researching episode topics, I think AI can do a lot of good for you. Generating outlines and interview questions. I actually experimented with both of these, or I should say the second one, generating outlines and interview questions. I have experimented with that for the outlines for our discussions here on the companion podcast. And when it came to interview questions, I had a client who wrote a book about AI, as a matter of fact, and I was working with him in media training. And I said, you know what? I'm just curious. Let me get into one of the AI tools here and draft a list of interview questions, spit out a bunch of questions, and I forwarded them to him. And I said, just so you know, I was experimenting with AI, and here's what AI came up with.
Mhm.
So, and I thought it was a great extra tool. It wasn't necessarily all the questions that I would ask, but it was helpful.
I think the thing that podcasters need to understand is there's kind of 3 layers to utilizing AI, right? So, good information in, good information out. But I tend to analogize all of these AI tools as basically having a million interns in your pocket,
Mhm.
and so having a million interns is a lot of work. I don't know if anyone has ever managed one intern, but I used to manage dozens of interns as a part of my company. And every season, when internships came around over the summer breaks, I would rue the day I created the internship program. There's obviously a cost. We paid our interns, and on top of that, we had to spend an inordinate amount of time helping them through the process, right? Helping them, guiding them day to day through their work. Interns don't have life experience. They have potentially a lot of knowledge about some subjects in their life, but they don't potentially have any knowledge about the subject that you need them to have knowledge about in their particular world. But they can digest, right? They're typically young people. And so they are still hungry, they're focused. All of those things are what AI does really well. It's capable of amassing all of those things, right? One intern may not know a lot about stuff, but if you got a million of them, then there's likely someone who knows about that subject. But now what you need to do with AI is you need to focus them. Right, you've got to say, okay, that one or those two interns out of a million, they know everything on this subject. So you need to talk to just them about knowledge. And the rest of you need to be like little worker bees and work off of what they're doing. So once you start to analogize the million interns concept around AI, it becomes easier to think about how helpful it can be in a lot of ways. But I bet most people, those who have good judgment, would not say, "Hey, podcast intern, take over the podcast. You become the host of the podcast instead
Yeah.
of me now." Right? That would be
No.
that would be silly. That would be silly, as you know, right? And anyone who thought, "No, that would be a good idea," um, please, please don't do that. The goal here, though, with the AI assistant is that now researching a podcast episode means that in order to put good information out, this is just kind of a general tip to everybody. You need to help the AI help. You need the AI to help you help it. And so, what I tend to do is I tend to ask it. Say, if I was researching an episode, I would say to it, I need to write a prompt for a deep research project for you. And I need you to interview me, asking me all the questions you need in order to write a really great deep research prompt. And now, what the AI is going to do is it's going to say, okay, what's the topic? Okay, I'd like to do a podcast on European savvy pastries, as to the New York City pastry pals, and so who are you? What are the details? It's going to start asking me all of the various questions. What topic are you trying to talk about? And then who are you? What's the podcast? What's the audience that you're trying to reach with this? And then it will go through it, ask you all the questions, right? And you can actually ask it to ask you all the questions at once, and then you can like type back the responses, or you can say, "Listen, ask me one at a time, and then when you're done, then execute the prompt, draft the prompt for me." What that does now is it uses the AI, the million interns, to do most of the job for you. Because if I wrote the deep research prompt, it would take me an hour, maybe 2 hours to properly craft a good one. But you know what? ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic Claude, you name it, they know how to do it because it's them, right? It knows what it wants to know best. And so now what you get out is a prompt. Now you take that to a new chat You say, I want a deep research prompt on European savory pastries, and here goes the deep research prompt that was produced. And now it's going to do 99% better than if you had done it yourself. And so that's where you could do some really great research for every episode. Did it save you time? I don't think so. But what it did do was it increased the quality of your podcast. And there's a difference there, right? Because if you were to do this by yourself, I have a inkling that you just wouldn't do it. You just wouldn't do the level of research that you're talking about here, right? You're going to do a couple Google searches, maybe you'll do a little bit of research on the topic in some way shape or form. You're going to lean on what you know. Maybe you have a guest and you're going to lean on their subject matter expertise. But the additional 15 minutes or so that you spent to craft the prompt to do it, and then to read the prompt, read the output of the deep research report, that's additional work that you didn't put in the process. But I absolutely believe that if you do it right and you get good information out, you're going to have a better podcast. You're just going to be that much better off.
So I'm curious, when I was dabbling with this, it did save me some time. And
Sure.
I'm curious as that, you really believe in the long run, it's not going to save you time. It's just going to give you a better version of what you could do yourself by the
No,
way
I
you're
think I
doing the
think in the I
prompts.
think no, I think in the continual compounding nature of the work, it will save you time.
Okay. Okay.
When you first start, it is not, right? So just like with interns, you are going to have to do a lot, or a new employee, right? You have to slow down to speed up. And so if you bring on a new employee, you've got to help onboard them. You've got to make sure you've answered all their questions. You've got to support them emotionally and socially through the onboarding into the organization, learn culture, and then they get stood up, in essence, to be able to do their job. That is extra work. That's work that you weren't doing before. And therefore, it's going to require you to basically slow down to speed up.
Sure,
In
but
the
you can give them a podcast and do the onboarding via internal podcasting, and that may save you a little bit of time there.
I was actually recently talking to someone about that, and so yes, so the goal here though is that slowing down to speed up is going to slow you down in the initial phases, and so I don't want to
Sure.
pull the wool over anyone's eyes that all of a sudden lickety split and everything becomes faster. There will be a slow period because you have to learn the tool, you have to learn the processes, you need to learn how to do the workflows with AI, but then 5 episodes, 10 episodes down the road, now this stuff is going to flywheel and you're going to save so much more time than you did before and have the high quality output. And that's the stuff we want to really get to, allowing you to lower the threshold to get into your full self, to bring it to the microphone and just be you, right? And know that you're fully empowered to bring the best audio, the best information, the best personality to the recording. And I think that a lot of folks miss out on that because they're not prepared and therefore they have lower confidence, and that equates to just a lower quality episode. And you could tell. I was recently interviewed by someone, and I knew they were phoning it in. I knew it, and you could tell in the process of it. And so it's not bad. It's not, whatever. But that requires me to have to bring more to the table, as a guest. And you're definitely aware, it's like, okay, well, you clearly didn't read the material. You clearly aren't aware of asking the right questions or segueing into the right, nooks and crannies that would actually create a great conversation. And so, yeah, I just think there's that there as well. I think that AI can also help in that kind of production assistant, like pre-production assistant, is really helping you understand a particular type of audience and trends. Many times if you're talking about a new subject, or if the podcast is going into a particular audience space, so you have a guest and that's an audience you want to get in front of, but you're not used to talking to that particular audience, and they're going to share that out to their audience. You want to make sure that you're speaking to your audience, but also potentially using some of the terminology, the cult language. Everybody has cult language. If you don't know, everyone uses some form of cult or cultish language. And so, if I say, are there any Raiders fans here, right? Every football person is going to perk up and they're going to know all of the football terminology, right? If I talk about you and your hometown, your college or your university football team, I couldn't even name mine, but but if I said yours, you're gonna know it. You're gonna all of a sudden be clued in to the language that might be used that's associated with your team, any inside jokes that the home team has about their players, their sport, their history. And um, that's really good information that you can have AI go out, research, and find for you. And I think one of the number one uses so I'll take a step back. I think that on a regular basis, according to my own digital marketing success strategy, is that you should always be creating, you should always be commenting, and you should always be capturing. That's the ABCs, right? So always be commenting, always be capturing, always be creating. In the capturing phase, that means that coming up with new ideas should not be that difficult, because as Steve and I are talking about any number of things, right? It's going to be just natural for me to say, "Oh, you know what? That's a really good podcast episode. You know what? That's a really good blog idea. I should," as long as I'm capturing those ideas when they're having them, I'm going to have enough ideas kind of in the hopper. But AI, again, do not just go to AI and say, give me a bunch of ideas. So I know that Steve went and prompted it to write a bunch of questions, and I think that's legitimate and totally useful. But when it comes to ideas, these need to be your ideas. And so I would much rather you go to an LLM chatbot and say, ask me questions that will prompt ideas, right? And that way the chatbot can say to you, hey, you know what, Ray? I know you really like kimchi and fermenting foods lately. How does fermenting foods, relate in some way, shape, or form to small business marketing, digital marketing? And I could say, oh, you know what? Well, you have to do some preparation, right? And then slowly but surely, you pack in the vegetables, you put in all of the right ingredients, and slowly the food ferments and becomes this new thing that's actually really good for your gut microbiome, right? That's a really fun, interesting analogy. I literally just made it up on the spot, folks. And so
You're
the
your
idea,
own AI tool.
I really am. I really am. I never have to use AI for ideation, but I know other people do. I know other
Mhm.
people do. And so, but this is the idea that, like, have it quiz you, because your ideas are always going to be more useful to you than the AI coming up with their own. The reason for this, I'm going to just clue you into this. We don't talk about this in the book because we didn't get too deep in the weeds here, but I think this is really important for people to understand. If I have AI generate a bunch of text on a bunch of ideas and have it then generate the text also, fantastic. I could produce tons of content. Man, I could be pumping out blog post after blog post after blog post of AI slop, as we call it, right? We now know it as AI slop. I could do that on the podcast too. I could have it auto generate scripts, record those scripts, and put them out also. Well, guess what? I'm going to stand in front of an audience at some point, or I'm going to be sitting with a client, a potential client even, and they're going to say, hey, you know what? Remember that episode where you talked about, kimchi and how it was a really good idea to like ferment, blog post ideas? And you're like, huh? What are you talking about? And they're gonna be like, "Well, you wrote a whole framework about it. Like, your podcast talked about that. Your blog post talked about all of that." And now I'm caught with my pants down, right? Because now they know I don't know what I'm talking about, and I can't even remember something that's fundamental to my own beliefs, right? I can't remember my own anecdotes. All of that is and needs to be you. So if you don't bring yourself authentically to the table and you don't let AI draw it out of you, then you're doing it the wrong way. And so this is the goal. AI is a tool to further human endeavors and thinking. It is not to replace human endeavors and thinking. And as long as you keep that in mind, you're going to be so much better off. And I know we've spent 15 minutes on segment one, Steve. So
Well, and to just sum it up and wrap that up, Wisconsin Badgers.
there you go. I think we're the Guardians. I don't know. I have no idea. uh, um, so actually,
No,
I actually do know what we are, but that's okay.
okay,
That's a whole nother.
it's another story. But no, and just to honestly put a fine bow on that, and I completely agree with your statement there that basically you're using AI to support your thinking, not replacing your thinking.
Yeah,
And
and that
that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, and there are really great times when it can help prompt it, right? You know, like the blank page is a really difficult place to start from, and so AI can really help you kind of prime the pump, and that's great. I love that idea, but then you need to like start thinking through, like, okay, if we're going to talk about this particular subject, then we need to hone it down to something that means is meaningful to me and meaningful to the way in which I communicate. Because if you don't do that work, then you're ultimately going to not have any recollection of its creation and therefore not be able to summon it when you really need to for the business. And most of you are going to be quizzed on this stuff at some point in the future by the most random people. You know, you're just going to see somebody in the grocery store and they're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, I read your newsletter and it was so interesting how you said that thing about that thing." And you're going to be like, "What are you talking about?" And you know, you just don't want to be caught, you know, like that, your hand in the AI cookie jar. And I think people will know, and that that like it's just a little bit of a chip in your reputation, but each of those little chips makes their way far further out, but in people's minds than, you know, any large good thing you do. And so remember, people love a car accident, right? They'll rubberneck to the cows come home. You know, Steve lives outside of DC. He knows what rubbernecking looks like. Uh,
Oh, yes. And I'm also unfortunately, somebody hit my car not too in the that distant past. So,
yes,
yes, I know when an accident is, unfortunately.
yes, yes. And so the reality is that people will take those little problems that occur with you and, you know, magnify them, and especially when they come to reputational harm, you want that authenticity to say. So I know that I've spoken too much about that. We're going to move on to utilizing AI in some of these more fine preparation components. And so, Steve, maybe what are some of the things that you think beyond what we've already talked about, but like what are some other things that people can do?
So, in talking about content creation and preparation, we want to stick with sort of that overall theme before we move on to some other themes. Okay,
Mhm.
so I, you can draft episode outlines. That's one way. You can, we talked about interview questions, but you can actually structure them rather than just coming up solely on what the interview questions are going to be. Talking points, you can create talking points. It can help organize complex topics. So you can do a variety of different things along those lines. And again, we go back to the important point that this is to support your thinking, not replace your thinking. And when you are stopped at the grocery store, Ray, you will have all the knowledge that your brain will be bursting, knowing that you actually are the one who came up with everything. It's just that AI helped you get more of it out there. Maybe that's a way to think about it.
Yeah, and so the kind of point here, and then we'll move on, is that I really believe in having AI be the interviewer, to be interrogative more than it is anything else. And by allowing it to be interrogative in the starting process of podcasting, you're saying it out loud. And there's a lot of kind of research about how by vocalizing things, we have this kind of neural connection to something that we vocalized. There's a whole bunch of kind of research around this topic, but you're going to say things in all kinds of perhaps jumbled words. You're not going to say it perfectly, but the fact that you've had a chance to talk it out loud once allows you to formalize and formulate the words better when you're going to go ahead and record it as well. So utilizing the podcast for that reason. But then, as you said, you could say like, okay, I've got a bunch of interview questions I want to ask this podcast guest upcoming. You know, I want to ask them about this topic, and then I want to ask them about that topic, and then you like yell at the dog, and then you come back and you continue talking to the AI, and you know, you get it all out. You know, maybe it takes you 5 or 10 minutes to kind of think of all the questions, and then you can say, hey, you know what, can you summarize those questions, put them into good form, and read them back to me? And now it'll just do it. And now you can say, okay, those are great questions, I actually missed two. Those two questions need to go in, they actually need to go you know, second and third place. And okay, give me the full list of the new questions. I want you to be utilizing AI in that kind of voice mode. It's going to be much more strategically useful to you, and it will save you a lot more time than having to type back and forth to the tool as much. Now, I will say this, a lot of people then get hyperactive about hitting voice for everything they want to do with the tool, and that's also a waste of time. So remember that sometimes the best thing to do is just to type, you know, the short prompt as you're making your way through usage of the tool.
And I wanted to just circle back to something we talked about in an earlier episode when it came to how to be a good host. And, we are talking a lot here about, structuring your interview questions, helping figure all that out and the talking points and the like. Don't forget when you're a host to listen to your guest. You may have a ton of questions that AI helped you with. Doesn't mean you have to go through every single one of those questions. It's important to just listen to your guest, what they say, because that may spur another question and you might be going down a different road, and a road that might be more productive or better for your episode anyway. So just keep that in mind. As much as this is a tool to help you, and that goes back to, your perspective, your voice, and your experience in this particular case, that has to be central. So don't forget that.
Yep. Listeners are there to build a relationship with you, right? Not to build a relationship with the algorithm
Oh,
or
those
with,
questions, yeah, that that
y-
that were spit
yeah,
out by AI.
correct. They're not there to build a relationship with Facebook or Instagram. They're not there to build a relationship with the AI that you're using. They're there to build a relationship with you and to a greater extent, or to a lesser extent, that is, with the business, right? People attach to people, and then they assume a relationship with a brand beyond that, right? Whether that be a product, service, organization, or business. And so use it to support your thinking, right? And you'll be so much better off. So that's kind of in the preparation and kind of pre-production space. And then we get into actual recording and post-production, Steve. Let's talk through some of the tools and ways in which uh, just so folks know, in the book, we basically have category by category kind of written out explanations of these topics that we're talking about, so that you can understand, like, okay, how can I use it for this kind of thing in my podcast? So we do it kind of by the workflow category. So if it's post production, if it's editing, if it's preparation, we kind of have it outlined in the book in that sense, so you can kind of get understanding. But some of these production and post production tools are categories, but they're also features in other tools. So what are some of those, Steve?
Actually, this is probably my favorite now, the automatic transcription. And there are tools where you can, download your audio, it'll spit back a transcription, and you can actually edit using the words in the transcription. And I come from, because I'm old, I come from the days of a razor blade and a reel to reel tape recorder and cutting the tape with a razor blade to edit. Then we went to waveform, which is very popular now. But now, with the newest AI tools, you can actually edit just by going into the transcription of your audio, or in some cases, video, and edit by just deleting certain words. That's amazing to me, and I love that.
I think we're going to see so much in this way. I
Oh
think
my
it's going to be really, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite. Another of my favorites is noise reduction, and you can clean up your audio with some of these AI tools. Give you a little boost, to your if your audio is sounding kind of flat, and you can, give it a little spark, a little oomph when you listen back and you're hearing it as a listener. Hopefully, Ray, who's responsible for some of the editing here, or you're doing that with our when we release our audio versions of this. I'm hoping you're doing that, please. Anyway,
Well, I mean, well, a little bit behind the scenes, some of you may have listened to an earlier episode, and I had to take it into an AI tool because, for whatever reason, we just had a recording issue, and thanks to it, it really cleaned up the audio, so it sounded so much better. And so like best laid plans, Steve and I are using great software. We've got really competent microphones. We do a tech check. We all sound fine. We record the episode, and then I come back to listen to. Well, Steve listened to it and said, "Oh, Ray, this doesn't sound great." And so, thankfully, we were able to take it into an AI tool and be able to go ahead and fix that. It's not going to be perfect, but it's certainly better audio than it was. And so that's the kind of thing that AI can really help save your tush in these kinds of circumstances. I will say this also about automatic transcription. It is at the 95 percentile when you have clear audio, when you don't have really strong accents from the native language that it is transcribing as well. So if you are doing, say, an English language podcast like we are right now, and say my dear colleague Francis Wade joins the podcast, he has a heavy Jamaican accent. It's going to be now reducing the quality of that because it's just not trained on enough data for that Jamaican English language accent. And therefore, now I need to go through and make sure that I read Francis's transcript words more, right? Because it's just a draft. I got to go through and I got to read it more because it's going to change words. And it's sometimes going to change words to the worst possible choices. And so I see this all the time now on YouTube. I think it's really, really interesting that so many YouTube creators are letting the automatic transcription go without ever reading it. And so this is just a tip to all of you on YouTube. Once you upload a YouTube video, you can upload your own transcript, but it will automatically generate one as well. And that's the same thing if you upload a podcast episode, it's going to auto generate that as well. You should download that transcript and read it.
Yes.
And it doesn't even require that much work, Steve. You know this, right? Once
Mhm.
you start reading it, it's just going to be an odd word. It's going to say like tire instead of your name, or it's going to be like it's going to be very obvious that it's not the right word in the sequence. So it doesn't take much time. You don't have to read every single word, but you're going to notice that like, why does it say Pokemon instead of poking my mom or something like that? You know what I mean? Like it's gonna get some of those things just wrong, and I see this all the time, and it's just really unfortunate because one, folks who have who have a disability, but also folks like me, I watch everything with captions on. I also listen to all of my podcasts with visual captions on, and so I'm seeing your errors. I'm seeing how stupid I think you are when you do that. And so, like do the due diligence of making sure that you go ahead and just spot check the transcriptions, because that quality matters. Because if this is your business, people are going to say, well, if they're not very diligent about just checking over their transcript, why would I want them to be diligent about making my last will and testament, or helping me with my insurance, or building my new home, right? If you're an architect, like all of those things matter. Details matter in these cases, so just be mindful of that. It doesn't always matter, but most of the time it just helps just to like give it a once over and make sure that it hasn't done anything really foolish in that sense. So just like people do pay attention to those things, and it's worth spot checking.
So a couple of others that we should mention, and then we can move on here. Generating show notes, because we've talked about, with the automatic transcription, the noise reduction, audio cleanup. Basically, it's assisting in your editing, but it also can help you generate show notes, create your summaries of your episodes, and put in any kind of timestamps that you need as part of your show notes and your summaries. It's all helpful for all of that.
And this is where you can have real efficiency, right? Because that would be
Yes,
a manually coded process, and now all you have to do is just run through and fix any errors that it made. And it's
correct,
really good at that kind of stuff.
correct.
All right. So then this brings us to kind of the more fun side of AI, I think, which is that there is this notion that AI can basically make you famous. And somehow it's just going to, in an automated fashion, promote your podcast and do all the marketing for you. And you're just going to all of a sudden skyrocket to the top of Apple's featured podcast section. Uh, you are not. And that's okay, because AI is really going to play an important role in promoting your podcast, notwithstanding, and you're going to be better off for having used it than not. And I just think about it from a whole bunch of different examples. The one that I am thinking will help me the most is that I want to be able to start scaling content for my own business. And to date, I've just not been really good at that. I turn off at times and I focus on my client work, and I just kind of set aside the content editorial schedule. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this right now. And now that I'm going to be starting, the podcast again, and doing these things, I'm going to enjoy the fact that I can say, you know what, I could do a podcast episode and then have it turn it into a blog post draft, and I can then take that blog post draft and really quickly edit it into a podcast kind of focused, or podcast topic turned blog post topic. And now that blog post can kind of summarize what we talked about in the podcast and lead people back to the podcast episode. And now that work is done for me that I otherwise, one, I wouldn't do. And two, now I'm in an editing mode and I am a really good editor, right? So I'm very comfortable with editing, and I feel more comfortable in an editing mode than I am in the raw draft generation mode of something that I feel like I've already done. Right. I'm like, I already recorded that episode. I don't want to do that again. And so having the AI do it from the transcript is really great, right? I could tell it all the points I want to make, say like, okay, I want you to focus on this blog post on this particular thing that we talked about in the podcast episode, and the rest of it's just kind of summary, bullet point stuff, and voila, it produces it for me. What are some of the other things that AI can do in promoting your podcast?
So, one that I believe a lot of folks are doing is video clips. We haven't done that yet with these live shows that we're doing here, but we could ask AI to suggest some video clips and highlight moments, assuming we have highlight moments, Ray, from this companion podcast. So that's a way to use it. I know you're big on email newsletters. It could help you with email newsletter summaries to help promote your episodes.
Absolutely.
You also have social media posts it can help you with, captions as well. So those are a few.
Yeah, I think there's a whole host of things that we typically don't do now, and one, technology will just get better about the features, so that'll be good. For example, social media images that you post, they should all really have captions. Not only is it good for accessibility, but it's also good for the search engines built into social networks to be able to find your content and surface it to other people better. And so you have this duality that there is something in it for you, and there's also a common good that you create by creating content that has greater accessibility. And I know myself, you're sometimes in a rush and you're just like, oh, I've got to write a caption now for this image. And thankfully, the AI features now allow you to just press a button and it will look at the image and it will fully describe that image. And now you may need to just make a couple word adjustment, but now you have a description that you otherwise wouldn't be able to produce at that speed. And now what you're doing is you're putting a keyword rich description into a search engine that is, the social network has its own search engine, right? And all of them do. If you can think about it, a social network is also a search engine, and you have search engines like Google and the rest, but every social network is also a search engine. And so you want to be able to be found, and that means all of the content should be able to be found. And an image is just not indexable the same way. And so having that alt text, as they call it, ALT text for alternative text, really increases your ability to be exposed, which means people are going to learn about you, learn about the podcast, and therefore come listen. And so it's a short walk from me reading an effective caption about an image, seeing it, and being brought to your podcast than you think. It's a bridge builder for a lot of content. And
So
so,
how would I'm just curious. So how would that work? So let's say the New York City Pastry Pals want to do a social media post.
mhm.
So can you walk us through that briefly on how that would work with a caption in a post from, let's
Sure.
say, one of
So
their episodes about empanadas or whatever you were talking
Sh
about earlier?
sure. So, let's do the European savory pastries.
Yes, that's
They
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead
There you go.
and interview some famous, pastry chef, and they are there in the podcast studio, and they have the famous chef with them. They get together and say, "Let's grab a photo of ourselves," and they take a photo of Beth and Monique and the famous chef, right? Now, they take that photo and they just toss it into Google Gemini, ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude, and they say, "Write an alt text description of this image." And it's going to go ahead and say, hey, this is, Jose Andres with Beth and Monique from the New York City Pastry Pals. It's a mid 60s chef in chef attire and two, describing the women, and then they're going to get a paragraph, right, of text right there in the box, and they're going to be able to change it and say like, oh, that's Beth and Monique, and then blah blah blah, and that's Jose Andres, and his actual age if it got it wrong, but those kinds of things. And now they just copy and paste that into Instagram when they go to post. So
Simple as that.
it's super simple, and you think of it as like, it's throwaway. It's not. It doesn't mean that much. It means a lot to these search engines. The fact that they're telling you to do it tells you that you should do it because it's going to benefit you. If it's going to benefit them, you've got to make it benefit you too. And that means if they want you to do it, they're going to prefer you over others who are not doing it. And so that's going to give you the advantage. And so you really want to think about those things. Google has been doing this for 20 years. They've been telling everybody to put alt text in their websites. They've been telling people to make sure that you put in rich site schema. They've been telling you to do these things because it helps them. And if it helps them, they're going to benefit you. And so they're going to prefer you over others when you do the right things that help them. Anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of promotion or otherwise? Because I could talk about this now for like, 5 days. So I don't wanna push the envelope here anymore because I could literally just start like talking about all these things forever.
So there's one that I think is important as well, and we didn't talk about this, can help you with marketing copy for your episode promotion.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is a really important one. I think that, the goal here is that wherever you are going to be posting your podcast, you want to have a consistent brand representation and making sure that you are always giving the AI your brand guidelines. If you don't have brand guidelines, you go to the AI and you say, I don't have brand guidelines. Interview me and help me build brand guidelines, so that you have the same colors being used. You're maintaining the same tagline for the business, that your business name is spelled correctly, right? By giving it brand guidelines. Like for my company name is W3 Consulting. Sometimes it will say W and then write out the word three as opposed to the number three, and so on and so forth, right? So you can tell it those things. Our tagline for the company is helping small businesses on the web and beyond. Well, I want to make sure it knows that tagline and provide it with the colors of our logo. And so every time it produces content, it has those brand guidelines associated with it, right? We don't allow anything. So if the logo is 50 pixels by 50 pixels on a screen, then we don't allow anything to be within 50 pixels of the logo, right? That's part of the brand guidelines. And so that way things don't get junked up against the edges of things and it just looks cleaner. So you can provide it with all of those things, and then voila, the AI is going to know that your million interns are going to be like, hey, Raymond said not to put things within 50 pixels of these things, so don't do it. And voila, it will start to pay attention to those things and do it. You have to be very explicit with the AI, otherwise it just doesn't have that kind of experience or knowledge to be able to help you out. And so then what that means is that when you have it produce that marketing copy, it's consistent. It has the brand, design built into the language. There's what we call a brand language. That's not necessarily the visuals, but it's also the voice and emotion that comes into the stuff that you write. And now you can communicate that. It's subtle, but it's communicated by virtue of being consistent about it. And yeah, that means like if you've got a post on your, social media, if you got to put that in your email, if you got to put that in your ad copy, it's all going to be really clean and consistent for you, in that sense.
So when you mention all of these that we've just talked about, this is key. Think of this as one episode that can be transformed into a number of pieces of content that can extend your reach across multiple platforms. You have so many opportunities to help you repurpose, not only just repurpose, but AI can help you repurpose probably more efficiently than you might be able to do by yourself. So I
Right.
think that's important.
And to your point about using, say, Opus Clips or otherwise to create kind of social media clips for things, this is where recording like we're an audio focused product where, in my opinion, the Companion Podcast is an audio focused podcast. It's a limited series. Steve and I are only doing so many episodes, and then it will live there for you all to listen back to and read the book. And the goal though is that now that we do have the video that we recorded alongside it, we can use that as marketing material by throwing it into AI, having it produce the clips, and then sharing those clips out to direct people to whether they want to watch the video of two talking heads or not is good for you if you like that. But the other side is that it's going to direct them to the audio version as well, so they can listen to it on wherever they're at. And so that's the kind of thing you could do as well. That if you do have a video version, even even if you even if that's not the primary version, it becomes the source of producing social content. And so it does make sense to record a video version of the podcast, even if you're not using it for the podcast itself. And I think that's totally legitimate. It's totally helpful. And this is where video is a great supplement to audio podcasts, but it does not replace an audio podcast. And for all the reasons we've talked about before, but just understand I think video is important, but if you have an audio focused podcast, it fits a different purpose. And you need to have your podcast marketed with fit for purpose types of content. And so you're not going to put, solely audio content onto YouTube. You're going to use YouTube Shorts, and that's going to be vertical video. And so now Steve and I can use this vertical video for being able to do so. So we can go through and we can say, oh, you know what, this clip is actually really good. What Steve said in minute 3:23. Let's grab that one, and now let's use that as a short. And Ray said this at 15:22. Let's go ahead and grab that and make that as a short. And now the AI can just cut it out, create the segment, and now we can upload them on a schedule. That's the kind of thing that really helps you elevate your podcast by virtue of giving short URLs, right? Making sure that people know, hey, there goes, podcasting for small business companion podcast episode, 11, and giving them a little short URL so that they can go and access that episode really quickly and easily.
True.
All right. So closing up, let's talk about the human in the loop and what that really means, because I think that you and I probably disagree on some level as to how much AI should be used as and with human voice, and I think that's really good for people to disagree and to kind of figure out for themselves. There is ambivalence in between us because we come from different spaces, and I know that I'm right ultimately, but
Sure,
but
Ray.
not because Steve doesn't have really good principles around this, but because I know what business owners are going to do, and I just pay a lot of attention to this, and so I know what business owners are going to do. So I want to give them guardrails to not go off the rails, and so I think that Steve. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Your position is that humans should always be the voice of their podcast.
Correct.
Right. And I agree with that statement, except the one area where I think there is an exception is that I think there are times and moments where you would potentially either use an AI generated voice or use a cloned version of your own voice. As we note in the book, never clone someone's voice without their permission, and never use audio from, I don't care if it's Muhammad Ali or Bruce Lee or, whatever, Chun
Peggy
Li.
Lee.
Yeah, Chun Li, which is a fake character from the video games. But like none of those, Street Fighter 2 for anybody. And so the goal here is you don't clone people's voices without their permission. It's only going to harm you ultimately. That being the case, there isn't, in my opinion, and this doesn't have to be Steve's, as I said, but this is my opinion, which is that there are going to be times when it will be faster for you to reproduce a recording utilizing the AI cloned voice than it is to go and re-record a even a segment of a podcast, because it's just going to take more time and energy to create the audio. And so and that could be in uh an intro, it could be in the outro, and it could be just like I think of it as like, like you said the wrong sentence, and you just need to be able to say the right sentence in the audio track itself. And so you're just going to cut that out. You're going to use the AI to clone your voice. And once you've cloned it once, it's there and ready for you. But I actually like to clone it each time, because if I've recorded in a particular environment, I want the audio to be really close to that. Right. Because that's the whole point, right? You want it to be able to stay in line. And this is not so much of a problem for me, right? Like I've always got my podcast. I'm sitting in my podcast studio, which happens to be my office. I could record anytime. I'm not going to use AI voice cloning. But some business owners are renting studio space, and they're going to send it off to a podcast editor, and they're not going to have the ability to re-record in those circumstances. There is a place where you may take a sentence or an intro and outro and have AI produce those for you, and it's not changing the nature or substance, or I think the true authenticity of the podcast itself being you, that it's not that big of a deal, right? So that's like a very, very small gray area. Do not take that as license for me to that Ray said that you could use AI to clone your voice and read your podcasts from a script. That is not at all what I'm saying.
No.
But I think there is a space where business owners, for the efficiency and operational effectiveness of the podcast workflow, that it's okay. It's going to be fine. No one's going to even notice that you changed a sentence, to be you. Now, it would be very, very bad if you did that for a guest and you changed when they said something like, "I don't like Raymond," and you changed it to, "I love Raymond." Everybody loves Raymond, right? And so that would be not only ethically and morally wrong, but it would also just be inauthentic for you to do that. So that's the kind of thing where there is a clear line, and the gray area is a very, very small area, and it should be fairly easy for you to know that you can do it, and then the rest of it should just be your voice. And if you have a bad recording, there are tools that can help you fix those things. And if you don't know them, go to podcastingforsmallbusiness.com, check out the resources library. We've got a bunch of tools in there that can do that stuff. And then once in a while, you're just gonna have a bum recording, and you're gonna have to re-record, and you're gonna have to take it on the chin. And you're gonna have to reach out to that guest, and you're gonna have to say, "Listen, the episode was basically garbage. We were both low energy. We were not prepared. Let's do it again." Or the audio recording was just, it didn't happen. It came out bad. Let's re-record the episode. Right. So that's going to happen. Don't be afraid of that happening, and don't think that AI is going to be able to just, step in and fix it. We started the show with the fact that AI was able to actually fix it for us, but it's not always going to be able to do that, and you need to be comfortable with that reality. So prepare for the inevitable mistakes. What else do we want to share, Steve, before we close out the episode?
So maybe we just want to, you like to use the word underscore, to underscore that your voice, your experience, and your perspective are what builds trust with the audience. And AI, again, we said it can support the workflow, but it definitely does not replace the authenticity that listeners respond to when it's your voice and value. So I just wanted to add those two.
Absolutely. I think, you know, a lot of what we've been saying is that AI is transforming how content is created and distributed, and podcasting is not going to be an exception in the marketplace. Businesses are going to be using AI as a part of their operations, and that makes sense for them to use it in their podcasting. So use AI wisely to work more efficiently, and that will, of course, help you reach more people. And it really helps you focus in on what matters most in the process, which is creating that meaningful content for your audience and creating that relationship. So I think that if you can focus on those things, then you are amplifying your goal, your voice, which is ultimately the goal, and not replacing your voice. And where possible, I think keep an open mind to AI, because there will be some folks who are just AI skeptics, and there will be basically folks who are just afraid of AI. And you can't be afraid of a tool unless you want to be, right? You can be afraid of knives just like you could be afraid of scorpions, but one is a tool and one is an animal, right? And so we want to basically think through the fact that the tool is only as good as its use, and the animal is unpredictable. We know that. AI is not an animal, it is a tool. And so we have to think about it from that perspective. So I hope that really helps everybody. Again, thanks for listening to the companion podcast, and make sure to check out podcastingforsmallbusiness.com. That's where the book is. You can find all the buy links on the website there. It also, as I said before, it contains our podcast resources library. And so it's available for free. You can access it just by punching in some information and going ahead and accessing the library of all the various tools and downloads and so on and so forth from the book. But otherwise, Steve, I think it's time for us to bid everybody adieu.
Yeah, we're done. You
All right,
want to be
everybody.
more formal about it?
Yeah, this has been Ray Sidney Smith and Steve Orr, authors of Podcasting for Small Business, the essential blueprint to launch your podcast. Take care, everybody, and hopefully you send us along your links to your podcasts when they launch. We want to hear them. We want to hear from you and know about the podcasts that you launch. Take care.